Hey there, wellness family, Peter Gordon here. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video, which is titled Shame Ate My Soul. So this is your first visit to my channel. Thank you so very much. If you're a returning visitor, thank you so very much as well. If you could do me a small favor, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like this video, comment on it, share it, but also don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you're notified every Thursday when I post a brand new video. So let's get into the heart of today's topic, which is called Shame Ate My Soul. But before I do that, I want to put this little disclaimer. When I make these videos, I try to talk about things from my personal experience. It is then my hope that you may be able to draw some parallels between your experiences and mine and be able to make some profound changes in your life or continue to do the amazing things that you're currently doing. So with that in mind, let's get into the topic. So what exactly do I mean by shame ate my soul? Well, I'm going to try to answer that by sharing two personal stories of mine. So I grew up in Jamaica. I was the second youngest of 8 children. Now we grew up extremely poor. When I say poor, I'm talking third world poor. And if you're from the developing country, you know what third world poor looks like. It means going days without food. It means not having shoes. We were very, 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 very poor. At one point when I was about age 13, we were evicted from our home. So we were homeless. We bounced from place to place. And I'm not entirely sure how we survived. But the interesting part about that experience was this. I had no shame about it. I was not afraid to say that I had struggled. I was not afraid to say that we were poor. Because in a weird way, even though that we were in that situation, I never lost hope. I always felt, maybe I was just young and naive, but nonetheless, I always felt as if I had hope. And the hope was I was going to pull myself and my family as well out of this mess. We were going to make it. In effect, it felt like the poverty we went through made us more resilient, right? And I was never ashamed of it. And it was those experiences, as painful and as hard as they were, that, as I mentioned before, created a certain level of resilience in me. It was what pushed me to apply to an American college to get in. It's what pushed me to finish my degree. It's what pushed me to do work, to not be afraid of work, to not be afraid of trying hard enough, you know? In effect, as I mentioned before, I had no shame about the experiences. So with no shame, I never had hopelessness. In fact, it created a hopeful sort of mindset. Now fast forward 3 decades later, and here I am, a 43-year-old man going through a divorce and completely unhappy with his current career trajectory, just unhappy. And those things combined, for the first time in my life, made me feel completely hopeless. Now, if you were to analyze that, I wouldn't blame you for saying, what happened to this guy? As a 13-year-old, he had such resilience. He probably went through way more difficulty as a poor child in a third world country, just struggling with his family, all that stuff. What happened to that fight? Has he become somewhat of a wimpy person here at 43, where he's going through a divorce and he doesn't like where his career is going and he suddenly feels completely hopeless? What happened to him? Well, the answer to that question is really, really, really simple. The difference between that 13-year-old boy and the 43-year-old man was one thing. The 13-year-old boy had no shame. The 43-year-old man was completely ashamed of himself. And that shame drove a high level of hopelessness. The reality was, he was ashamed that his marriage had failed. He was ashamed that his career was not where he thought it should be. And again, that shame drove a high level of hopelessness. And so many of us struggle with the similar thing that I went through, this notion that we are ashamed. We felt like we're not living up to our full potential. We felt like we are completely by ourselves and we are the only ones going through this. It is not uncommon to feel that way, and that is what I felt. So if my experiences resonate with you and you're dealing with a lot of issues around shame and hopelessness that's attached to that shame, I want to share a couple tips with you that helped me get past my shame, that allowed me to develop a high level of hopelessness and a high level of resiliency towards achieving the things that I want. I want to share some things with you that allowed me at 45 to decide that I now wanted to become a doctor of psychology. And now I'm back in graduate school working towards that eventual doctorate in clinical psychology. So let's go into those tips. So number 1, admit that you are ashamed. As simple as that sounds, I can tell you I hid from that shame. I pretended like I was not ashamed. But the truth is, the sooner you admit that shame, the more quicker you become self-aware. The more self-aware you become, the more you start to want to make profound changes in your life. So that's number one, admit that you're ashamed. Number two, find someone to talk to. It could either be a therapist, a psychologist, your spiritual advisor, a family friend, a parent, a brother, a sister, whatever. Find someone to talk to and be open about the things that you are ashamed of. The one thing you learn, and this happened with me when I started talking to friends, I realized that I was not the only one that was going through those experiences. I was not the only one that's going through a divorce, and I won't be the last. I'm not the only one that was not happy with my career. It happens to the best of us. When you start to open up to people, what you find is that you're not alone. And a lot of the times that can give you motivation, because those people can give you some little tidbits that help them get through their phase, right? So that's the big thing. Find someone to talk to. If I were to be candid, I would definitely say talk to a therapist. But again, it could be a spiritual advisor, a parent, someone that you trust that will not judge you. So let's go on to the next one. Number three. Go back to your most resilient self. What exactly do I mean by that? What I did when I was at my lowest point and I was slowly coming out of it, I went back to a point in my life when I was the most resilient and drew inspiration from that. And for me, that was when I was 13 years old, when I was under a mango tree with our furniture on the side of the road with my brother and my mother, and rain is falling and our furniture is getting wet. I went back to that time where I remember saying to myself, this will never happen to me again, right? That was my most resilient self. So I went back to that moment and I drew inspiration from that. And what I found was that this little moment that I was going through was nothing compared to that. In effect, that moment had taught me how to be resilient. I had just forgotten about it. So I went back to that moment. To find a moment in your life where you are most resilient and draw inspiration from that. And that will help you get through the shame and the hopelessness. So I hope this video makes sense to you, and I hope you drew inspiration from it. And if you're struggling around issues of shame and hopelessness, reach out to someone, talk to someone, all that good stuff. Don't let it hold you down, because the longer you get mired in it, the worse life can become for you. Anyways, family, as always, stay well.